we go! Or something. We're talking about a movie whose taglines include, "You are what they eat. If you don't belong, they'll eat you alive." And "The rich have always fed off the poor. This time it's for real." That's right, we're talking about 1989's Society. And with me to discuss this incredibly interesting movie is Ryan from One Track Mind. Ryan, how are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm fan-bloody-tastic. The only thing that could make my day better is to have the reveal of a guy's face coming out of somebody's ass.
And boy, did you get that in spades.
I wanted to do something with Ryan, and we were going to do something different than a riff or a basic review, so we decided just to have a conversation about this classic cult movie that is so visceral. I don't even know how to describe it. To give a little bit of background on Society, it's a 1989 movie that was directed by Brian Yuzna. Previously, Yuzna was a producer on movies like Reanimator, From Beyond, and The Dolls. This was his first directorial attempt, not his last by any stretch. He's also known as the director of Silent Night, Deadly Night 4.
And I believe we did that movie on Reels of Justice.
Nice. You know, certainly the most distinctive of the Silent Night, Deadly Night series.
Yes, it's absolutely insane.
Was very successful across Europe, and it was released in 1989. It was actually shelved in the States until the early 2000s. And the thinking was that Europeans were more accepting of the ideas in the movie, where to some extent in the US we didn't quite get it.
I still think we haven't gotten it as of yet.
I would agree with that. It also stars Bill Warlock, who did over 400 episodes of Days of Our Lives. He was also in Halloween 2 as Craig. And funnily enough, his dad was Michael Myers in Halloween 2, and his brother was also
Dick Warlock, the great stuntman.
Yes, so there's a lot of Halloween connections there, which is kind of cool. One of the lesser appreciated Halloween movies, but still quite unique in its approach.
The solid gentleman's 6.
If you can't be a gentlemanly 6, then what the hell are you even doing, right? There was a lot of like soap opera stars in this, but I think it's one of those things of that time, like that was a lot of the pool of talent that you pulled.
Right.
Okay, so the basic synopsis of this crazy movie. Bill is worried he is, quote, different than his sister and parents. They mix with other upper-class people while Bill is more down to earth. Even his girlfriend seems a bit odd. All is revealed when Bill returns home to find a party in full swing. Not for the weak of stomach. And it's rated R for bizarre sexuality and violence and for language. And of all the things that this movie has going, language is like this tiny little piece of this gigantic weird movie.
Yeah, it does not deserve to be the and. That is like, oh, and people say naughty words. Like, yeah, but that's not really what's offensive about this movie, but that's okay.
I suppose there's that standard of morals. It's like, well, we're on this level, but there are certain things that we don't allow in this house, and that's one of them.
Potty mouth is not acceptable, but hey, giant KY jelly orgies, that's okay.
They must have, you know how they, in Barbie, how they basically destroyed the world's pink paint market?
Yeah.
I think they probably had that with KY jelly here.
People go into the drugstore trying to get their daily allotment, like, wait a second, it's sold out again. There must be a movie going on around here.
Man, even the off-brand stuff is gone.
Yeah, if you can't get Walgreens brand KY jelly, then what is the world coming to? That's just ridiculous.
I don't know, and it's a scary prospect. That does bring up one other interesting piece on this movie. Screaming Mad George did the effects for this, and he is, without doubt, such a master at what he does, and he's on full display here.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think that, like, before this he did Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. He did Big Trouble in Little China and Predator. And if you look at those three, I think Dream Warriors you can make a direct line between Dream Warriors and Society. He completely outdoes himself on this film. Like, the practical effects are astounding.
Oh, yeah. And both in big and small ways. It's amazing, just the level of detail.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't know, I think that considering the time, I think that they hold up pretty well considering. It's like anything, you know, things age out. I mean, look at the Star Wars prequels now versus when they came out. But there is something very solid about those effects. And I guess you get that with practical over CGI to start with, but it looks good.
Yeah, they're tactile. They have a certain utility to them that it completely separates from aging. Like, it's one of those things where you can look at the scenes and you could say, oh, this is probably how they did it. But you're not going to be able to see the seams. Like, they're remarkably accomplished.
Oh, yeah. And they edit everything that revolves around it. Like the scene later in the movie with Bill's sister, mom, and dad, where they're all kind of merged together, and the way that they cut between the real faces or the real arms or whatever and the practical effects, they do a really good job of that. You know, you get enough to see what you need to see, but then they move on.
No, absolutely.
All right, well, let's get into this crazy movie. We find Bill in his kitchen, and he's kind of wandering around, and I will say the kitchen is so intensely clean and unused. You know, I think that's a good sign that you're in for massive trouble. Any kitchen that looks like that, I don't care where you are, horror movie or not.
Yeah, especially like Nancy Meyers movies. They're surprisingly, I mean, there's always about older white ladies in kitchens, but surprisingly, no one ever gets murdered in a Nancy Meyers movie, which is, I think, would make them better. Like, I think The Holiday would be better if Jack Black got killed.
Well, it would certainly make for a Black Christmas, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and here we meet Bill, who is our main character. He comes out of his dream or whatever, and we find that he's with a therapist by the name of Dr. Cleveland. He's talking about how, you know, he thinks that there's something weird going on, but the therapist says, oh no, you're fine, don't worry about it.
And in that same scene, he takes a bite out of an apple and there's bugs in it, and it's the most disgusting image. And it's like, you bite into an apple just to get bugs? Like, this is why I don't eat fruit. It's also why my health is terrible.
Well, all the bugs are just there for extra protein, you know, I mean...
I guess, yeah. But they're a little squirmy for my taste. I like my food to be stationary. I don't like it to move.
We see him back at his house. He's playing basketball outside, and they talk about how this van outside belongs to a former boyfriend of his sister Jen, whose name is Blanchard. And then we go up and we see his sister Jen, who is in the process of getting ready, putting on her outfit, and she's being watched from the closet. And it turns out that her ex is in there trying to warn her about something, which clearly will not have ramifications later.
Yes, and if you're warning somebody, a good place to hide is in the closet.
Absolutely.
Instead of, just like, approaching them on a human level and saying, hey, by the way, there's something up. No, you just go inside their closet, sniff their shoes a little bit, get the scent all over, and then jump out and say, but I got something to tell you.
I mean, that is the best way to go about it, right?
Exactly. That's what I do with all my friends. When I have something to tell them, I just go inside their closet, and I wait, and then I pop out and go, by the way, I have something to tell you. I get kicked out of a lot of houses. I don't know if that's clear, but I do.
Take it for what it's worth and be like, oh, you know what? That's a really nice chair. Where can I get it as they're kicking you out of the house? Jenny is getting ready for her coming out, which I didn't realize that they still did in the 80s. She's coming out to society.
We have a title.
Roll credits. He's gonna miss it because he's got, school and life and all that good stuff. And upon meeting with this therapist, he describes his family as
one big happy family, except for a little incest and psychosis.
Which I think for a lot of more affluent families, that's probably the case.
There's a reason why they call them blue bloods. They like to keep it in the family, if you know what I'm saying.
No, I have no idea what you're saying. Can you go in depth? Kidding.
Okay, because I was ready to, but if you don't want me to, that's fine.
I mean, if you know what, you have so much in-depth knowledge on everything, please feel free.
So it started in 1600 when families wanted to keep their bloodlines pure. No, I'm not going to go to that.
We'll just say the purebloods of Harry Potter aren't far off, and the royals as well. There's a reason that they're a little weird. Yeah,
that's why their teeth all look so weird, because genetics. That's how it works.
While talking with this therapist, he also talks about how he doesn't fit in with his family, how he thinks he might have been adopted, which, for the time and place was not all that uncommon, and is still, we all have those moments where we're like, how am I related to this family? I mean, they go to coming out parties and they smell weird and they dress like that. What the hell's going on? So we see a little bit of Bill's life. He plays basketball and is apparently very good at it. He does this whole debate thing against this very, very nerdy looking blue blood guy, and
gets distracted by Clarissa, who is a former playmate and dated Prince and Sylvester Stallone leading up to this movie. And I gotta say, in watching this movie again, I am into Clarissa something fierce. I dig her. all the way. Oh my God, she's so pretty.
It's her personality, right?
Right, exactly. It has nothing to do with her looks. It has to do with her intellect is what I'm really obsessed with.
After they have this little meet cute thing where Bill's current girlfriend gets rather upset with him, they go to the beach and we're introduced formally to Ted Ferguson, who is kind of I don't even know what he is. He's like the head preppy boy at this very preppy academy.
Yeah, he's an alpha male, but doesn't have like the signifiers that traditionally come with that role. Yeah, he's just an Aryan dude.
Basically, that is a really good way to put it. He's Zach Morris, but pumped up to 11.
Yes, and without a cell phone.
Yes, which is sad. You'd think that he would have one. I think he would have been better off with a cell phone.
And if he turned to the camera occasionally and gave little asides, that would have been comforting, but he does not do that.
He also doesn't have an AC Slater sidekick, and I think that there's a loss there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess Clarissa is the Kelly Kapowski analog in this story, but we could have used, what's her name, Lisa? Is that the other girl?
Oh, yep. About that time, we get a really interesting take on the Blue Danube. First, it's played normally, and then it gets a really discordant version. And they do that with the opening and closing song, which is a take on the Eton College theme from the UK.
Yes, used ironically, but it's really, really effective in the way that it's used in the film. Like the political commentary that is delivered just by playing that song at a certain register is really, it's on point.
I would agree. Bill and his girlfriend are sitting there and they see Mr. Ted Ferguson himself. They've got butlers and they've got barbecue and they got babes, and it's always good to have those three Bs. But they were not invited to Ted Ferguson's party and she is desperate to go. So, after being squirted with sunscreen,
a very metaphorical scene that presages what's about to happen in the bottom third of the film.
Well, and also, what does it mean when the kids spray him with it?
Yeah, this movie's twisted. This movie's it's a little twisted.
It's a little on the weird side, no doubt. They go over and he's still got it on his face, and he goes to ask Ted about if there's any parties coming up, and Ted says, oh, well, we'll let you know.
Send you a telegram.
They get into the high school class presidency question, and Bill says, well, I'm going to win it, and Ted basically says,
we don't lose.
It comes into play quite a lot throughout the rest of the movie, no doubt.
Yes, absolutely.
Also on the beach, Blanchard kind of comes across Bill, and he says, hey Bill, I need to talk to you, but we need to do it in silence. But he pulls out this super secret suitcase, and inside is a mini recorder that he apparently somehow put on Jen's earring as well as underneath the car. And he's got all these crazy recordings of basically this coming out was Jen getting it on with Ted Ferguson and then with basically everybody else.
Yeah, including her parents.
Yeah.
And they talk, because they don't like the F word, they say copulation is the proper and prim way of saying it.
I suppose it's better than saying intercourse.
Yeah, intercourse. I mean, unless you're talking about Intercourse, Pennsylvania, which is a really nice town. Yeah, I should hire my my Reels of Justice co-host Dylan, who is a big college word guy. He loves his 10-cent words, and maybe he could come up with some other ones for us. But fortunately, he's not here. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Bill takes this tape. He runs over to Dr. Cleveland's house, and he's like, Dr. Cleveland, I have proof that my family is really fucked up. And Dr. Cleveland goes, hey, I'm doing other stuff here, man. It's not my office hours. Come back and we can talk tomorrow. And
yeah, give me the tape. I'll listen to it. I'll talk to you about it tomorrow.
Exactly. And Bill is kind of like, eh.
Yeah, in a horror movie, you should never do that. Because they're gonna pull a switcheroo. That's just how it works.
What if you don't know that you're in a horror movie, though?
Ooh, good point. This isn't a Kevin Williamson picture where everybody's self-reflexive and aware that they're in a slasher. That's a good point. But I mean, he is, it's like a waking nightmare. So I guess you're kind of aware that you're kind of in a horror movie.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you have that many doubts about your family being your family, I think that that's probably a good point at which you don't trust people. For which Dr. Cleveland goes, hey, do you not trust me? Come on, man, I'm your therapist. You gotta trust me. He apparently does the teenage thing and, trusts an adult and hands off the tape. The next day, they have their appointment and the tape has been switched. Or it might not be. You know, Bill might just be, you know, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, I mean, that is ultimately the question.
Yeah.
Did he hear the right thing, or is there a giant conspiracy going on? And obviously it's a conspiracy, but you're supposed to be in his mindset in that moment and completely unaware which way the pendulum is going to swing.
Absolutely. And there are enough references to things where even if you're unaware of what's going on, the way that things are spoken, you kind of get the idea that there's more going on than what you're given. So
yes, there are multiple levels at any given moment.
So he calls Blanchard, and Blanchard is going to meet him. But when Bill goes to meet him, there is a god-awful accident, and it's just a mess. His you know, stalker van is turned upside down. There's a bloody corpse being taken, you know, to the hospital. There's a really creepy-ass cop worthy of the T-1000 that's, like, stopping Bill from doing his thing. It's quite the scene.
Yes, and he's stopped short of being able to see the guy's face.
Yes.
Which becomes very important as the film goes on.
Absolutely so. So Bill, at the last minute, gets an invite to Ted's party. We're not sure why, but it's like, hey, he got invited. He's moving up in the world, clearly. He's been accepted by this total and utter asshole. Butthead.
And he gets it via telegram, which you would think that he was just being sarcastic earlier, but no, he was being serious. That's how he sends invites.
But you know, it's kind of like, a lot of times, like, it seems like rich people kind of go more old school. Like, you look at, you know, someone drives around in a classic car or whatever it might be. There is that thing about, like, the technology doesn't always stick up with the person. And I'm not sure if that's what they were going for here. I think it was probably just more the telegram gag. But generally speaking, that does seem to be the case with a lot of folks.
I would love to think that the rich are just constantly sending each other telegrams. I would really like to exist in that world where it's like, we could call you on your cell phone, but no, we're going to send you via Western Union.
I mean, it is more exclusive if you want to be honest about it.
Yeah, and you get to, when you're describing what you want the message to be, you get to say the word stop a lot.
So Bill leaves to go to the party, and he realizes that he didn't bring his girlfriend along, which, you know, basically fuck her, not literally, of course. And he runs across the fantastically beautiful Clarissa. And she's all like, hey, baby, how you doing? They go back to have quite an intimate moment. Ryan, would you like to describe more about this, since Clarissa is your lady?
Yeah, this is a hot and heavy scene. This is...
Behold! Cinema!
This is why you tuned into the film. To get this nice late 80s sex scene that... and after the scene is over, it looks like her body has contorted. Her butt is on the front. And he thinks that he sees this, but then he kind of moves his gaze and then he redirects it, and it's back to normal. So it puts you up against this idea of, again, is he imagining all this stuff as it's going on? Is he hallucinating? Is he losing his mind?
Or is it a case like President Scroob, where he gets beamed from one room to the other, his ass is on backwards?
Why didn't somebody tell me my ass was so big?
No beaming!
No more beaming!
Fun thing about that entire scene, the actress that plays Clarissa is Playboy pinup.
Yes, for Playboy Playmate, yes.
And she, you know, totally cool being naked, but when it came to doing an actual sex scene, it said that she was actually quite nervous. And I think the same thing was said about Bill Warlock as well. He was quite nervous to show his butt because he didn't have a good butt, apparently.
Which, I gotta say, I disagree. I think his butt is perfectly fine. Nothing to write home about, but it's a fine butt. Yeah, and at least he didn't get the butt turned around onto the front, because that would be unfortunate.
Well, he'd have a tail then.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want a tail?
He'd have a tail like Jason Alexander in Shallow Hal.
Oh, good. After they get it on, Clarissa says,
How do you like your tea? Cream? Sugar? Or do you want me to pee in it?
kinky, I guess.
I gotta say, polite is that she asked. I mean, most people just pee in the cup, but she's like, you know, she's prim and proper. She's got good breeding.
That's very true. And, you know, it goes to show that she respects him as a person. We're introduced to her mom, Mrs. Carlton, and she's kind of an interesting individual, and they never really flesh her out. You can kind of make guesses at what's going on with her, but she's kind of like, do you remember Bulk from Power Rangers?
Yes.
If you like put a wig and extreme makeup on Bulk, you'd kind of get her mom, I feel like.
Yes, absolutely. And she has this thing where she eats hair. And on the audio commentary, Brian Yuzna says, I still don't know what that means. And he made the damn movie. And he still admits that it makes no sense. It does not track. It doesn't play out as like a story point. It's just something that's weird that this weird lady who looks kind of like Tor Johnson in a wig.
Oh my God, yes.
Just likes to eat hair. And it's something that carries through the entire motion picture. Every time she's on screen, she's usually eating hair. And it makes absolutely no sense. And even the director knows that I have no idea what this means.
Well, you know, he's leaving it up to your own interpretation. Like, I don't know about you, but with everything that was going on, and the fact that Invasion of the Body Snatchers was kind of an influence for this, I kind of took it as, you know, the dog with the human face in the 70s Invasion.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of took it like something went wrong with that, and she ended up that way. With what's coming later, maybe she did that to the wrong person and ended up, you know, enjoying the taste of a good wig.
Yeah, there's a lot of these things that kind of play as non sequiturs. And as the movie goes on and becomes more twisted, you kind of think like maybe there's a purpose to them, but at the same time, maybe not. Like that's the fun thing about this movie is trying to figure out what matters and what doesn't. Because all of it could matter or none of it could. It's a nightmare. And like it's even based on Brian Yuzna's actual nightmares at times.
Holy crap. He confronts his parents after a sex doll eating a Ken doll was put in his car. We find out later by his friend. It doesn't make a ton of sense. Again, it's just kind of one of those weird moments.
And like, why would that disturb him? Like, it's just a blow-up doll. It's not like it's a blow-up doll filled with human feces. Like, it's fine. Just move it out of your car. Just get it out of the passenger seat. What the hell's the matter with you?
Well, it's because he looked at the Ken doll and he's like, "Am I Kenuff?"
For all 5 people out there who saw Barbie. Oh no, wait. There's a lot of people who saw Barbie. Never mind. Yeah, they'll all get it.
Well, we certainly hope so. He confronts his parents and his sister about all of this stuff, and after being weirdly hit on by his mom because he looks good in a tie, he goes to Blanchard's funeral, and his friend Milo decides to stick his finger in Blanchard's face, and he ends up like breaking it like you would the surface of wax.
Right, and it's the one special effect that Brian Yuzna does not like in the film.
It was like, I know I like sticking my fingers in wax, and it's kind of like, ooh, I want to do that, but it's also a corpse, and it's like, no. But while there, Petrie says, hey, I need to tell you something and meet me here because we don't want to do it at a funeral because that might, you know, make the family quite upset as well as disturb the, you know, wax corpse of Blanchard. Which is, you know, nice. You know, not everybody would do that.
Yeah, it takes a certain kind of gentleman.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, Petrie, despite looking like a very weird combination of, like, Harry Potter and the one weird curly-haired guy from Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Bill goes to meet him, and it turns out he wakes up dead.
Which, you know, it happens. Happens to all of us eventually.
Bill freaks out and goes to find the police. When they come back, it's a completely different car in the middle of the woods. He gets kind of called out by the cop who says, the next time I see you, you're going to be in bigger trouble. Bill goes to school the next day, and Petrie is there, and he's looking fine. So it's like, what the hell's going on? You know, things are starting to kind of turn and get even more weird.
Yes, the foot has hit the gas at this point in terms of the paranoia.
Yes.
This is full blown. This is not just Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but this is Invaders from Mars at this certain point, where everybody is being replaced. Who can you trust, if you can trust anyone? And the answer, of course, is no one.
Oh, absolutely. And the bigger question is, what is he seeing? What's real? What's not? How can he be a good member of society while still maintaining himself?
Exactly.
So Bill arrives home. His family is all like, oh, where have you been? He confronts his family about all of this stuff. And Dr. Cleveland decides that he's going to give drugs to Bill, even if he doesn't want them.
Yes, and by drugs, we mean inject him.
Clearly, Bill is a teen that's out of his mind, and it was the 80s.
Yeah, it's truly upsetting. It's one of those images where it's just like, okay, I know shit is about to get really bad at this point. And boy, does it get bad. Oh, man.
It gets weird quick. So Bill is taken off in an ambulance, and Milo, who has been trailing him, follows them to the hospital, and that bastard parks in handicapped parking of all places.
I didn't notice that.
That bastard. Milo goes into the hospital because he's following the ambulance. They saw him bring Bill in, and like the lady at the front desk is like, we don't have anybody here by that name. And then we see that Bill is in a hospital gown, and on his orders are a high enema, a colonoscopy, an NPO, which stands for nothing by mouth.
Yeah, it stands for no penguins only.
Which, if you have penguins up your ass, that's kind of a bad place to be to start.
That's why you need the enema.
And a high enema, no doubt.
Yeah, because low enemas, they're not good. Mid enemas, they're okay.
He wakes up in the hospital and he's discombobulated as hell. Notice I used a cool word.
He's almost somnambulistic when he's being discombobulated.
Oh, that's a great use of a word right there. I'm so proud of you. He manages to escape, but then he gets captured again. He's captured for what's called a shunting.
Yes, this is what the movie is all about. This is what we've been building to this whole time. This is the reason Brian Yuzna made the movie. This is the reason why Screaming Mad George made the movie. This is why the movie exists, is for the shunt, which is the single weirdest orgy since Eyes Wide Shut.
100% agreed with you there. Although I will say, it's not a traditional orgy. The way that things play out in TerrorVision, certainly its own thing.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
Milo and Mrs. Carlton follow behind because she randomly shows up in the back of his car.
Yeah, they become a dynamic duo throughout the back half of the film.
They have so many amazing shenanigans. It's fantastic. This last 30 minutes, there's so much random humor.
Yes, there's a moment in which Billy sees his dad, and his dad's face is in his butthole. And he says, well, you called me a butthead. I guess you were right.
That's some classic dad humor right there, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that's the ultimate dad joke. That's what everything has been building to, is that one dad joke.
Brian Yuzna was holding that in for years, wanting to use it, and he didn't have a use for it. And he's like, ah!
He's like, I'll try to put it in Reanimator. No, it doesn't work. From Beyond? No, it doesn't work. Dolls definitely doesn't work. I finally found my project.
Behold, cinema!
And film was forever changed that day.
Absolutely. And they're like, hey, we're going to shunt you right after we shunt Blanchard. And I feel so bad for Blanchard because this poor guy, he literally takes it up the ass,
Yeah, he gets fisted. And by this weird, corrupt businessman who keeps smoking a cigar, which is really gross.
That and the cigar is never lit.
Yeah, it's, oh god, it's so disgusting. And he sticks his fist up Blanchard's butt and pulls his hand through his face. And so his fingers are coming out of his nose and his mouth and his eye sockets. And it's one of the single most disturbing images I've ever seen in my life. And to imagine the fact that this is based on a nightmare that Brian Yuzna once had. I've never had a nightmare that bad. Like, I have nightmares every night, but never to the point where I'm getting fisted and a hand is coming out my face, because, I don't know, that'd be kind of weird. To have that in your head and be like, yep, this is what I'm going to commit to celluloid today, I can't imagine. Like, that is, wow.
Yeah. And leading up to this, all of these other intensely rich people that we've seen to this point and are a part of the community, they're basically sucking on all parts of Blanchard. And you see these facial appliances of them essentially like connecting with his body and kind of sucking his essence and sucking him, and not in a sexual way, just they're able to stick his fingers like into his flesh. The trivia actually says that when they were doing it, the guy that played Blanchard, they actually had to step him down a little bit because it was so over the top.
Mm-hmm.
But in and around all this, so all of these rich people are essentially, they're an entirely different species than human or humanoid or whatever. But they essentially are shapeshifters. But as part of this orgy thing, they start sucking on each other, and there's this writhing mass of just flesh over this entire great room. Like, it's going to be a hell of a cleanup job. That's all I'm going to say. It's the amount of lube and body parts, and like I can only imagine like you form back into yourself and you're like, hey, where did my cock ring go? George, come on, man. You know how much I paid for that, you know?
And Billy accuses them of being aliens. And the judge says, no, my boy, we've been here as long as you have. We're not from outer space. But never says specifically what they are, which I think is a real success on the movie's part, is that it allows the audience to try and piece that together. Because honestly, I don't think that they had an answer. So that's just kind of a clever way of disassociating. But it's one of those things, like, the second he says we're not aliens, I start wondering, so what the hell are they?
That's a good question. And I guess to go with the MST3K mantra,
Repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax.
but it's awesome that it's open-ended, but you do kind of go into that place of, is it a primordial thing? Is it like one of those quirks of evolution? Clarissa has been watching this whole time, and she's got feelings for Bill, genuine ones, and she's like, well, I'm not just gonna sit here. So she gets him loose, and he takes off trying to find a way out, and he's chased down by his therapist, and he's got these, like, I don't know if he was coming out of the orgy and maybe his mouth hadn't quite reformed, but he's got this like weird like Joker smile going.
Yes, I was about to say that it's just like Jack Nicholson in Batman.
Yes. Oh my God. He's not been in a lot of stuff. When would Batman have come out? Would it have been
Same
88?
year.
Same year. Oh my God.
Yeah, just a symbiosis. But specifically where he puts on flesh tone paint on his face to cover up the fact that he has the white face. Yeah, that's exactly what he looks like. Yeah, it's weird.
At the moment, Cleveland also gets a hand for a head, and then he's got another hand that's kind of coming towards Billy the same way that they would have in like the Corman Fantastic Four. It's a fantastic effect.
Yeah, this is where it completely goes off the deep end, and it's just trying to think of as many nightmare images as you can possibly conjure. Every single character at that point has some kind of transformation that is just absolute Cronenbergian body horror.
Absolutely. And it's so well done. So we go into his parents' room, and his mom is laying there, and you don't see her arms, but you see a pair of men's arms coming out where her legs would be. And it's like, what the hell's going on here? You see her get up. She doesn't have any arms of her own. And she comes towards him, and she's all like, hey, baby, how you doing? His sister's head pops out of her crotch.
It's oh my God. It's amazing, but it's revolting. Like, it's one of those. I mean, I don't know if Cronenberg ever saw this movie, but I have to imagine that if he was in the theater, he was nodding with appreciation, going, yes, this is cinema. This is why I make movies. See, I want to make Videodrome 2. How can I make it more messed up? Yeah, okay, there you go. That works.
So then you get to see Bill's dad, who is probably the most well-known image, I'd say, from this movie, would you say?
Yes, the butthead.
And his head is literally like, cheek and cheek, and then third cheek is kind of his dad's face. The whole Ted-Bill fight was Bill's getting the shit beat out of him, and then Ted starts to suck on him, and then...
And at this moment, Billy fists him and pulls out his insides from the outside. And literally, it's one of those things where it's like he's inside out, and it reminds me of Slim Goodbody, who used to be on the Late Night with Conan O'Brien, which was a anatomically correct skeleton that had his organs on the outside. And it's one of those things, like, it's one of those images where I don't know if Conan got it from that. I don't know if they were even aware of society. Oh my God, it is the most revolting thing I've ever seen in my life.
But it is good to see that Ted became a weird meat puppet. I think that was highly appropriate. And the fact that his insides were all like, bugs and stuff, kind of like the apple. It was a nice kind of call.
Squirmy. Nice and squirmy.
Very much so. And that was like you say, all of the prosthetics, all of that stuff was just amazing. But then at the very end, the judge is still there and Cleveland is still there. And the judge says to Cleveland, I got an opening in DC. So in some ways, even though they, as Ted said earlier in the movie, they still kind of win despite that loss. So,
which is the ultimate nightmare. You go through everything and they still win.
There's that moment of, oh my God, we got away. But in the grand scheme,
did you? That
whole section is just, the movie is great, but that whole section is just, like you say, it leaves you just like, ugh.
Having seen it again, it is imprinted on my subconscious. It's one of those things that's going to be with me when I die. Like it's eternal now.
For better or for worse, you will always have that dad joke you can use.
Yes, exactly. When I finally have kids and I transition my face to my butt, I will tell them. So you always thought I was a butthead, huh?
I will say one final thought. I love the fact that in the credits they had shunting puppeteers.
What a great thing to have on your resume.
Oh, man.
People looking at it, I've never seen this picture, Society. What's a shunt? Well, it's an interesting story.
You got 20 minutes and a good therapist because we're going to be talking for a while.
You're interviewing at the Jim Henson Company. Well, Kermit, this is what a shunting is.
I'm just kind of looking through trivia here. Yuzna would put a sign on the soundstage door that read, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." And that's so awesome.
What a great thing to do on your first movie.
You gotta set a precedent though. That way people know what to expect.
Exactly. No cell phones, abandon all hope, all the traditional stuff.
Obviously you've seen this more than once, but what are your thoughts on this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I love political horror. And this is, even if it's not overtly political, it's definitely a reaction to the Reaganite society of the 1980s and the crass commercialist, capitalist, political violence of that era. And I love allegorical science fiction and horror, and this is both. It is potent, it packs a punch. It's one of those things where even if you don't like it, you're not going to forget it anytime soon.
No, absolutely not. It's got there's so much going on, and like throughout they keep referring back to for all of their young people, well, we want you to be a good member of society or a contributing member of society, or it was about wealth and about all of that stuff, like you say, the capitalism aspects. All these little peons, they don't matter. We are eternal kind of a deal. Like, I read one review that said that this was kind of like the anti-Ferris Bueller. I see that, but it's not as much. Like, besides the kind of wealthy kid, you don't really get a ton of that.
I mean, it's the anti-John Hughes, really. This idea that, society's kind of crumbling, but, the youth of America will be okay. And this hypothesizes, no, it won't. This is the status quo. This is how society is going to be until society crumbles. It's such a well-considered movie for something that could be easily dismissed as exploitation. There is so much intentionality behind it that there's nothing as an accident in this film.
Depending upon the critic, they kind of said, well, it's a fantastic tale of our times, and then other people say, well, it's kind of weird and it's too on the nose. But I agree with the former. I think it does a great job of laying bare those things in a sci-fi way, the same way you would out of something, a B-movie of the 50s.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to be on the nose. Sometimes that's exactly the right delivery mechanism. And this is so well considered on Yuzna's part. And it's definitely, if it is on the nose, he meant it to be. I'm
glad that it's still out there. I'm glad that it's got that cult status.
Its legacy has been held up in recent years. Society is here.
Well, Ryan, can you tell people where to find you and what's coming up next?
I have two podcasts, one of which is One Track Mind, where I analyze film through the prism of audio commentaries. Special features which, if you watch this channel, you will be very familiar with because you do your research. And I also do Reels of Justice, which is a fake movie court where we have a prosecutor, a defender, a judge, and a jury, and we try to determine if a film is guilty of being a bad movie.
If you need a good podcast where you learn stuff and you'll be entertained, you're not going to find better than both of those because they are fantastic. Special thanks to Ryan for joining me. Check out the One Track Mind and Reels of Justice podcast. All links are in the description. So what do you think? Suggestions for movies, trivial questions, comments, ratings, and a lifetime supply of KY jelly would be appreciated. Thank you so very much for watching.